What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Down to Earth. This is our first real long-form show that we've done on this channel. Now, I was going to put this on as a Big Thing episode, but I was like, I don't want to wait. I don't want to put it because I had Avi Loeb on the show yesterday. So I could have waited and put this episode out the following Tuesday, but I'm like, no, man, so let's put it on the Down to Earth channel and let's talk to Ashton Forbes. Now, the funny thing is that we were both following each other, I guess, before I really even started to see his stuff, and I don't know how that happens. It just happens. But I saw a documentary on Netflix on the Malaysia flight, the MH370, and I was fascinated by this documentary. I was just, I like everybody else, like, what the hell happened to this plane? Nobody really. There's like 75,000 different explanations as far as like what happened to this plane, and nobody knows. This guy thinks he knows. I saw him on the Vetted show with Patrick. He was originally, and he's going to correct me on anything I get wrong here when I bring him in, but he originally was invited to be on Joe Rogan's podcast. And then I think it was like Jeremy Corbell and somebody else said, the videos aren't real, don't do it. And then Joe said, no, all right, fine, I won't do it. So Ashton then took to Twitter, and he's very active on Twitter. He's really beaten the drum to the fact that you've seen this video. I've played this video before on my show, and I'll play it again as I'm talking here. And this video that you see is claimed by people besides just Ashton that this is indeed that flight and that these are orbs. And then you see this poof, and then the plane's gone. Now, when I first saw this, a lot of people were saying, oh, it was aliens. It was this. Now, from what I saw from Ashton's report, and we mentioned this with Jesse Michaels, Ashton doesn't think that it's aliens. He's been very clear about this. Doesn't say aliens, doesn't say NHI. He thinks it's government technology. And we're fascinated. I'm fascinated by this. And Reilly's on with me today, and we're gonna talk to him about all this and more. So if you're brand new to this channel, you should subscribe to it, because we do Monday through Friday every day on this channel about all the stuff going on in the world of UAP, anti-gravity, all that kind of stuff that pops up. So if you were say, wait a minute, this guy talked to Avi Loeb? I did. So go to my other channel, which is every Tuesday, UAP Tuesday. You go there and you check that out, and that's what you get. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere podcasts are found. This is Down to Earth. So I'm here with Mark Reilly. Reilly, how you doing?
I'm well, Kristian. Thank you. I'm happy to finally be here on Down to Earth.
Yeah, it's true.
And especially, this is the first time, yes. and thank you for doing so, because this is Ashton is very, very active on Twitter. I'm very interested to hear what he has to say, because this video is insane.
It's insane. Remember, you and I saw this thing, like, when we first started covering this, you and I looked at it and said, now, if true, because we went alien route right away.
Of course.
And we said, okay, if this thing is indeed aliens and poof, and like, well, somebody's going to say it's debunked, right? Somebody's going to say it's not real. Now, when I talked about this on the Big Thing last week with I think it was Chris Carr and I don't know if it was Coy or stuff, I can't remember. And I played it for them, and every comment, not every, but a lot of comments were like, this is already debunked by the Corridor crew. Did you see? You've seen that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's one of the many different things that I want to talk to our guest here today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to Down to Earth, Mr. Ashton Forbes. Ashton, what's up, man? How are you?
Hey, Kristian. Hey, Reilly. Doing great, man. How are you guys?
I'm good, man.
Doing well, thank you.
Okay, so first of all, anything I said in that intro that I got wrong?
No, I think it was pretty good. You know, I think that one thing I want to comment on right away is people's reaction to the video. And, you know, I've had the same reaction everybody else had. And, you know, I think that's why I tell people it's only, I think, in 2024 we can even begin to accept that this could even be possibly real. You know, I saw this video, I saw the drone video in 2014 when it had initially posted that summer later on. And I just glossed over it. Your mind like can't even comprehend what you're looking at in there. And then now, like, I had the same kind of, the way it played out for me is at first I thought, okay, there's some weird stuff happening here, which we can verify to be real. And I thought this has to be, if it's real, it has to be like alien technology, some kind of it's super advanced technology. But the more I dug into it and watched those videos over and over and over again, the more I realized, like, this is us, this is an operation. And the more I dug into the science, I realized this can actually be our technology. Dug into the idea of warp drive, turns out it's the science has been out there, and especially the last few years has really been progressing a lot to the point where scientists argue that you can survive a wormhole if you were to like go through one. And the last thing I want to say real quick too is that I'm just a normal guy that saw this stuff and said, this could be real, guys. We need to dig into this, and took it upon myself to do that. And I haven't been selling any books. I've never asked anyone for money ever. The only reason why I do this is to get the information out there, because at this point, I'm 100% convinced that, yes, that is our technology. I don't know where it came from, but we have that technology, and we actually have functional warp drive in our military, which puts us at breakaway civilization level tech.
I mean,
that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot. So let's go back. Let's go back though, dude, to where you said like you're a normal guy that's kind of discovered this. Take me to that. Take me to, you know, what are you doing? Where are you in your life? Like what, like, you know, where are you in the world? Whether it's career, whatever it might be, to where and how does this pop up on your radar, and then you decide to say, oh yeah, this is my mission now. Like how does that happen?
So I think it goes back to probably 2017, 2018, when the DoD Navy released those drone videos or whatever, the FLIR videos, the weird UFO videos that the New York Times talked about.
Yeah.
And I looked at them. Before that, I never really gave the UFO phenomenon and alien stuff much credit. And I saw that and I went, wait, that's weird. We're looking at crafts that have no visible propulsion here. And I thought, wow, UFOs can actually be real. Government's kind of admitting to it. What the nature of them was, I never really knew. So I started watching, you know, I followed some of the social media stuff and these random videos. Never saw anything that, you know, was something that like actually gave me pause to be like, whoa, we got to dig into that. I've been in healthcare IT since I graduated in 2005, doing pretty much the same type of work, electronic medical records consulting, and I'm really good at it. I enjoy it a lot. But after I've seen these videos and dug into this, you know, I put myself at a lot of risk by doing this in terms of just, you know, the amount of attacks that you get. In terms of if I were to try to get another job, people would Google me, look up all this stuff out there, think, oh, maybe this guy's kind of out there.
Right.
Stuff like that. Not in addition to the fact that like I'm currently on a government contract with my company. So, you know, I have a security clearance with that for that job that's related to healthcare. And, you know, all of this stuff is potentially at risk. So,
well, have you gotten that real quick? So hold that thought, because because I wanted to ask you that. So because of that, and because you're on a government contract, have you gotten, because you're very active on Twitter, man, you post videos about this like at least 3, 4, maybe 5 times a day, maybe more.
Yeah.
Have you gotten something from your company and going, dude, let's cut back a little?
Not really.
Okay.
There's been like 1 or 2 times where people have either reached out to me and been like, hey, is that you on those? Or another time where they were like, you know, we're just trying to make sure that, you know, you're not being distracted by this other stuff that's going on. But I made sure I covered all my bases before like I came out publicly. Like I knew what the kind of risk I was taking. So I informed my company. I gave them my Twitter account, all my social media, and said, hey guys, if I'm doing anything wrong here, let me know. It says that my opinions are my own in here and all this stuff. And I'm not a stupid guy. Like I saw what happened with people like Bob Lazar in the 90s. And I don't necessarily know if I believe everything he's come out and said, but I've seen what the media will do to people and what social media will do to people. And that's why I wanted to make sure that I did not have that happen. So I've always tried to approach this case from a scientific perspective. Sure. So when I saw these videos in August of 2024, I saw the one drone video that I already seen 10 years ago. And I went like, oh, whoa, that's weird. I remember seeing that. But that happens a lot with these old UFO videos. But then I saw the satellite video as well. And I went, holy shit, there's a second video. And this second video is supposedly from another classified system. And it's a satellite video, which nobody even knows what satellite video, if we even have satellite video. And the part where I really got into it was I started reposting content that people were posting on social media. And I became personally an advocate for it when I saw that the mouse that we see in the satellite video is at a different frame rate than the background. The frame rate's very low in the background, indicating this is some kind of computer-generated system that's tracking like actual aircrafts over a large field of view. And then the mouse is at 24 frames per second, which is indicative of a remote terminal Citrix session. And they're cropping the screen. We can see because the mouse comes in. So when I saw that, I went, whoa, that's like a weird amount of details. Because at that point, it's like you can actually, they're telling you a story that this person saw this, logged into the database, pulled it up on their Google Earth military video playback, and started doing a cropped screen recording of it. And I saw that and I went, I've never seen any hoax videos that are already this level of detail. So that's when I got invested and said, if this is real, we should be able to prove it's real and be able to corroborate it against the real story of the plane. And oh boy, did we. I mean, I think we put out more evidence related to the story that we're putting forth than any other story by far.
Well, it's caught fire. I mean, you look at, I think as of today, you just crossed over 100,000 followers on Twitter. And I know that obviously you've got your naysayers, you've got people out there there's people like myself and Reilly who are like, I don't know what to believe yet.
Yeah.
I gotta listen. I want to hear the case. And then you get people who are just going to come after you and tell you that you're a loon. And then there's other people who are clearly behind you, have your back, believe that it's exactly what you're saying it is. But I know, Reilly, you had a few questions you wanted to ask Ashton also.
Well, yeah, I wanted to go into the whole idea of, because I saw this video and went, that's debunked. Is it? So when you say it isn't debunked, I know you put out like a bounty to get the person that would have created this as a hoax, the files, to come forward. Nobody's come forward. So speak on that, on like, when I say as the layman, it's debunked, that's fake. Why isn't it? Why is it not
that's a good
debunked?
question. And I totally respect anybody who would look at it like that. I mean, it seems impossible what we're seeing on those videos. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, the problem with debunking is debunking's not a fair game. With respect to debunking, people are trying to poke holes in your story and claim, therefore, that can't be true. But to really do a logical analysis, you need to come up with a comprehensive story. Who made the videos exactly? When did they make them? How did they make them? How did they have the information about how to make them? So the debunked information that's been coming out, actually all leads back to one man. His name's Mick West. Every single debunk that's out there leads back to him. Wow. The corridor crew one that you guys mentioned earlier, that's not even their original opinions. They just literally stole that from Mick West, didn't mention that in their videos for some reason. The jittery contrails debunk that's out there, also Mick West. The Pyromania VFX debunk, also Mick West once again. All of them come back from one guy who is a unemployed serial debunker who... in my opinion, I don't have a lot of respect for in general. I think that he falls victim to his own cognitive dissonance, but I'll leave that for everyone else to decide. With respect to the Pyromania VFX debunk, which appeared on Reddit social media August 19th, the same day Mick West claims to have founded an obscure 3DO killing time video game from the 90s an hour later.
Yeah.
That does not actually match our assets. I've actually got Mick West admitting that it doesn't match. And the story that he and the corridor crew and everybody else claim is that somebody completely changed the assets around. They changed the color. They changed the middle. It's completely different. And that the edges are too similar to not be the same thing. We were able to find that Taylor set off blast waves all have the same kind of blast dispersal pattern, just like that. And you can do that exact same comparison with any number of things, including supernovas, ink droplets, etc. And then to take it even a step further, we went ahead and looked up the 4 different locations where that asset was used, including the Killing Time video game that Mick West brought up.
Yeah.
It was used in a Attack on Titan advertisement on social media. It was used in Starship Troopers, the movie, as well as Eastbound and Down, the HBO hit show. None of those did they ever modify the asset. In fact, I don't think it's ever been modified in a way that the debunkers claim that it's been done in these videos ever in the history of that asset, because that's not how stock effects work. With stock effects, the whole point is that you just put it into your show, put it into your media, and then you let it play out there.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times what the debunkers will do is they'll show you a modified version of it, and then they won't tell you that that's not the original, that's just a modified version. So what I usually do is I show the actual perfect overlay of it, and you can see the one frame that is similar. It's not an exact match, but it's similar. But the other frames they're not even close to the same. And then the last thing I was going to say on that part is that if that is something that was modified, then the debunkers should be able to give us a list of steps to recreate it to make it a 100% pixel perfect match. If that's what their claim is, that somebody match it, because the burden of proof is on the person making the claim. So if they're saying that this is a stock effect, that this is the stock effect that it is, show us exactly how the person theoretically modified it. Give me a list of steps that I can do to recreate that. And this is why people have given me a lot of criticism, but the counter is so simple. You just ask how many pixels match. Because if you ask how many pixels match, they'll have to admit that it's not a pixel perfect match, which is what it would have to be in our videos here. Then there's the jittery contrails debunk also came from Mick West. It was a matter of the stabilization software. It's been conclusively proven that The reason why it shows the contrails, which is actually smoke displaced from the plane, is because in the version that they did the stabilization software to, the smoke trail is light blue and the background is blue. So the stabilization software is seen as one background without separating them. And that's why you get the displacement. And the way that was proven was somebody went ahead and converted to black and white.
Yes,
and then used the stabilization software. And then you can see that there's no displacement of the smoke trail on there. There was even an expert of the cameras that tried to argue with Mick West. Mick West wouldn't even listen to him on Twitter, which goes to show that these aren't people that they pretend like they're logical thinkers. But, the moment that somebody who's an actual expert weighs in, they just completely ignore them. And then the last one is this cloud debunk that's out there, this cloud picture.
Yeah, it's not like the clouds aren't moving, right? You say they are, they're just moving slowly.
They're definitely moving 100%. We've got absolute proof that I've posted on my Twitter as of like 2 days ago.
Okay.
People have the issue with it is you have to realize that when you look at clouds that are far away, they're not going to move very fast. And in this case, if the data that is being used in these satellite videos is from a satellite that's 1,100 kilometers away or as far as 40,000 kilometers away, depending on if it's the low Earth orbit or geo. In that case, you're going to have almost no movement. And whenever the perspective moves in the satellite video, it's only about 5 seconds long. So this isn't a situation where you're doing some kind of time lapse on the sky for hours at a time where the clouds are going to be flying by. And the situation where we have this ground-based computer program for the SBIRS system, space-based infrared system, this gets rid of any of the problems with the satellite moving. And we know it's not the satellite moving because we see the coordinates are stationary in the bottom left of the satellite video until you move the perspective, which tells us we're not looking through a satellite that's moving. Otherwise, those coordinates would be updated in real time as opposed to only when the perspective changes.
Right.
So we actually found that the military does literally use Google Earth and another program called Quick Terrain Modeler that produces a virtual environment for them to track objects like this. So it's perfectly consistent with what we see in those videos. The reason why it's not a 2D cloud picture in these videos is because we actually have both videos that you can see the same clouds when you kind of compare them side by side, especially near the end.
Sure.
You can see the same clouds in both videos. We showed that actually the Regicide-Anon version was a stereoscopic 3D, which means that it's slightly different angles, potentially from multiple satellites or multiple locations. We showed that the clouds are moving and evolving. And then the most important part is the zap is actually accurately illuminated in 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
So I've shown a picture out there where you can see that like the clouds on the left side are like accurately illuminated from the illuminations coming over here. And then the clouds in the foreground are not very illuminated because the light is hitting them from the backside. And this is, in my mind, if not impossible, practically impossible to fake that level of detail. That has to be a real 3D rendered environment.
Sure.
And if it's a 3D rendered environment, then you can't have a 2D cloud picture. And then I would go to Occam's razor, which the debunkers like to say as well. But Occam's razor is essentially what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to shave off things that can't be possible based on the evidence. And I would say, what is more likely here? Is it more likely that somebody created a 2D cloud picture from a 3D video, or that somebody created a 3D video from a 2D cloud picture? And I would argue it's potentially impossible to create a 3D video from 2 different perspectives using a 2D cloud picture. So that's kind of where we're at with that evidence. Now, I'm not accusing anyone directly of necessarily fabricating fake debunks that are out there, but I will say that I have been a victim of felony fraud where people did make fake evidence and fake metadata and what have you against me back in, I think it was December. So people are out there and these videos break people's minds to the degree where people are willing to do basically anything to take me down. And the last thing I'll say real quick is that if these videos are real, this is potentially the largest verifiable conspiracy of all time with respect to abducting an airplane, hiding anti-gravitational technology and space-time warping technology. Imagine what the intelligence communities would do to hide something that's serious. I think that they'd have no problem taking a VFX and pushing it to some debunkers and telling them, hey, go use this, or even to produce a cloud picture. One last thing I want to point out, the cloud picture. So the cloud picture only goes back to 2016 on the Wayback Machine. It had been updated in the same period of time in which some 6-day-old Reddit account claims to have found it. The clouds actually have to be like reshaped and sized in order to get to be matched. So it's completely inexplicable how somebody found it. Everybody related to the cloud picture, including the person who took it, the person who supposedly found it, The person whose website it was on is all related and knows the corridor crew. All of them do. And the cloud picture person is actually a photo manipulation expert as well. They told us to go look in the torrents because we asked like who would have downloaded this in this 70-day window. It doesn't exist in the torrents. If you reverse image search the cloud image, it doesn't go back to the website. It actually goes back to Reddit where people posted the image, but it doesn't go back to the website. So there is a huge amount of evidence for that this picture has somehow been, it's some type of ruse. Now, we tried to ask the owner of the website and say, can you tell us who downloaded this picture? How many people downloaded it in the 70-day window? And instead of doing that, they trolled the entire community and made this announcement. We found something suspicious. And then the next day came out and had a flying saucer graphic fly over the website and just, rickroll everyone. So this is the level of seriousness of the people that we're dealing with.
Dude, I'm on a road right now. And as I'm on this road, I see like all of the questions that I want to ask. And I don't know where to turn the car. Because it's like
I crashed.
For real. But like, all right, let's start with this then. Let's start with the idea as it prepped up top, and then you're convinced, people are convinced inside of this that this is indeed the Malaysia flight, right? And now, so we're convinced. You're convinced on that because of the timeline of when this came out. Because I think you misspoke by accident before. You had said August of 2024. So I mean, I think you meant that
2023 probably
2023, right? Okay,
yeah.
So that's
last year. August.
Got it.
Yeah. Can't be the future,
right? So I was like, look,
whole different podcast.
with this conversation, who the hell knows,
right?
But when it comes to this flight being Malaysian, that's because of where this lines up. Now, this video, you saw it first, and again, I'm going to mess up times, but you saw it first in 2018, is that right?
2014?
No.
2014. That's same summer.
That's when you saw it. Oh, wow. Okay.
I've always been curious about, mysterious plane crashes and things like that. So I was following this case back then.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I wasn't a journalist or anything, just a random guy.
So how did that, I guess that's my question then, Ashton. Like, why, if you're a normal guy at this point, and at 2014, this video comes out, you get a hold of this because it got leaked, right? It just happened to be on a website where you saw this. You went, holy shit, that actually might be the Malaysia flight. Is that kind of?
I mean, I completely ignored it back then.
Okay.
Like most people, and there's been many people, like thousands of people saw these videos in 2014. They're confirmed to go back to 2014. We have On the Way Back machine. I've got people would testify that they saw them back then, and including I saw the one. And I didn't think anything about it. I had no idea what I was looking at. I just see this, thermal video. I didn't even know what thermal video looked like back then. I certainly didn't know what a drone video looked like.
Right.
So I just clicked through it and moved away from it. And
well, that's what gets me. Well, hold on real quick. That's what gets me is because it's that video at 2014 is the same video that we see today. And the technology of today, if you're making deep fakes and AI things and all that, significantly different than in 2014. So harder to manipulate. Like if that comes out today, way harder sell because of. I mean, I just saw a video of LeBron James talking shit about everybody at a press conference, and it looked like him, but it wasn't. It was an AI video, and so that kind of stuff is easy to do. This in 2014 is a little harder to do, but the fact that it's 2014, it comes out around the same time as Malaysia flight comes out, and it takes you a while to get a hold of it. But why do we necessarily think that it is, the Malaysia flight? Because of the 2014, because of the timing of it, because of the location of where it is? Is that pretty much sums it up?
So yeah, it's the only missing set 777 that's out there. It's the thermal's an exact overlay of MH370, which is on my banner and Twitter. I've kept it on there the whole time. The coordinates are the real location of the plane in the Nicobar Islands that was only known after the video had already been published. The raw telemetry data didn't even get published until May 28th, 2014, and the video came out May 19th. So unless this person's a psychic precog, I don't know how they knew where to put the plane. Okay. This is the exact location where the plane turns into the South Indian Ocean as well. The Malaysian Minister of Defense said he was in contact with U.S. about spy satellites. Regicide Anand, if you look at the metadata in the satellite video, the metadata has MH370 in it, but only the metadata. He made a Twitter post 3 days later, May 22nd, saying, watch this video before it gets deleted. And he tagged MH370 there as well. So, all of that evidence, in my opinion, in addition with the timing of it, proves this is Malaysian Airlines. And then to your point of, in 2024, it would be a lot harder to sell this because we have all this AI stuff. But this predates, commercial deep fake and AI technology by years and years and years. And that's another reason why this might be our last chance to actually expose something like this because of how advanced technology has been. So it's yet another reason why I'm so adamant about not letting it go. Is like, this might be our only chance to show, what the nature of the UFO phenomenon is, anti-gravity, etc.
Let me tell you about Mack Weldon. Okay, so Mack Weldon, in general, it is a really, really wonderful company. Because a lot of times you want something both ways, right? Me, you know that I lost weight, but I can't lose weight and keep firing down pizza. Can't do it. Because we always think that looking sharp means that you got to have the starchy, the Oxfords and the stiff chinos rather than the effortless comfort. It is possible to have it both ways. They have light as air underwear to innovative anti-odor tees and versatile yet comfortable pants. It is so great what Mack Weldon is doing. They have a full range of clothes. And I'm telling you, Florida, browse this site. You're going to lose your minds. It's the best. I got, I'm always looking for the essentials in just like socks and underwear. And man, I got it. But then they sent me these pants. I have like, the t-shirts are so smooth. I wear them I'm just comfortably around the house, but I can also, if I'm going, I put on like a suit jacket the other day and I put it on with it. And then the pants, they fit perfectly. And I had some really comfortable sweatpants. Oh, really great. Okay, now peacocking. You guys are peacocking? That's for the birds. Now, some guys, you just want to go out there, you want to look good without calling attention to yourselves. Well, Mack Weldon Apparel gives you understated good looks for understated confidence. It's not flashy, just classic, always in style and made from the world's most comfortable performance materials. What that means usually, the performance fabric, usually means that clothes that look or feel techy or shiny, well, these are designed to fit your style and demands of modern life. So I just, I can't even tell you, like, this underwear is really comfortable. The sweatpants for me, I was wearing them the other day, and it just I like ones that just feel like I could go out, whether I'm just walking the dog, but I don't feel like, oh my God, people are looking at me. What am I wearing right now? We're just walking around the house in this, but it's stylish, man. I love it. Get timeless looks with modern comfort from Mack Weldon, but you got to go to mackweldon.com. You can get 20% off, which is pretty great, off your first order, but you got to use that code BIGTHING. So head on over to mackweldon.com and use that code BIGTHING. All right, guys, let's talk about AG1. You guys know I love AG1. If you've been listening to my show, you've heard me talk about them, and I've been drinking them for about 2 years now, and I love it. Never been a vitamins guy. I've told you that. I take it all one shot, AG1. Put it in a water bottle, I shake it up, I'm good to go. I recommend AG1 to my friends. I recommend AG1 to my family, everybody. AG1 is a team of doctors and scientists. It is tested for 950 contaminants and NSF certified for sport. It is formulated based on the latest science and maintains high quality standards. You guys know they've been with us for a while because you guys know too. You've all been checking them out, and everybody who's been signing up to AG1 says the same thing. It's changed your energy. It's changed how you approach things in the day. You're smiling more. You're running around the place, and you're sleeping better. I know. AG1 is the supplement that I trust to provide the support my body needs daily, and that's why they've been a partner for so long. If you want to take ownership of your health, it starts with AG1. Try AG1 and you get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3, K2, and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/bigthing. drinkag1.com/bigthing. Check it out.
So going back to 2017, Ashton, you saw the videos released by basically the government, right? The Go Fast, the Tic Tac. Is that where you're referring
New York
to?
Times.
New York Times.
Sorry.
Go Fast.
Yeah.
And yeah, we saw that. Kristian and I on the show all the time. We talk about that moment for us because I've had my own experience that I mention all the time. But we had that moment on this pop culture show where we went, "Why isn't this bigger than anything in the world?"
Right.
And we've been existing. We've been talking about it as NHI, as alien technology. Could those be drones? Could those videos be just the precursor to this?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, now those videos too, I think are from the early 2000s in terms of when they were filmed in general. So yeah, and I think when the government talks about these drone incursions and stuff that we're hearing about all the time, even the February shootdowns from last year that were like over Alaska, I think that they're talking about the stuff that we're seeing here. And I think these drones, you know, especially if these videos from 2014 and this is United States technology, I think definitely Russia and China and maybe even Iran and Korea to a lesser extent could have these floaty drones that, you know, you could argue look like a balloon, but just have anti-gravitational propulsion, which anti-gravity just means that you are creating a repulsive force of gravity. And I do think it's based on electromagnetics. But these videos have something else going on, which is just straight up space-time warping, you know, warping an aircraft like Star Trek warp drive, which takes it to a whole nother level.
Well, let's stay there then, because if it's because as we were covering this thing and those things that video popped up, first time I saw it was like 6 months ago. So when it does, I see 3 little orbs flying around it, and I'm covering UFOs every Tuesday, and I go, well, wait a minute, maybe if this is the case, potentially that's where these things go. There you hear these interdimensional movements whether it's a potential hint by David Grush or Luna saying, or somebody talking about interdimensional stuff, and that's a theory. And then hearing you and talking about the fact that it's U.S. tech, and then watching that Netflix doc and talking about how that there was definitely a lot of involvement by the U.S. government on almost like the kind of like the Men in Black side of it, and then talking to Jesse Michaels and watching that thing about T. Townsend Brown and anti-gravity, and it just, my head's about to blow off my body. You know, it's like, because I hear all this stuff. It's like, why are you so convinced, though, Ashton, that this is indeed U.S. tech and not NHI, or that you're convinced, you know, that you just explained why you don't think that the video itself is fake, but as far as like, you know, because us rationally looking at it going, it's not a thing. How does that happen? How do you
can't do this?
Yeah. How do you look at it and go, no, it is U.S. tech. I know it's U.S. tech for sure. It's not another country's tech. It's not alien tech. And this is legit. How do you get there?
Yeah, and I'm sure it's our technology. And I was just talking to Jesse about this actually. Since he went on your guys' podcast, I chatted with him a little bit, and because I watched that Thomas Townsend Brown documentary, and you know, he's going, I wonder if aliens are like just a distraction from the idea that we could have been, you know, advancing this technology in secret. And that's a good way to confuse, you know, just say, oh, it's just aliens out there, and get everyone to think that people are crazier and stuff like that. And I'm more and more, I'm kind of getting on that bandwagon now. If you listen to my first Investigate Earth podcast, the very first podcast I ever went on with Chad and Sherry, shout out to them. I thought this was aliens, and I thought it was non-human intelligence. I thought that this technology is thousands of years more advanced than we are, because that's where you go when you can't explain something.
Right.
If you can't explain it, can't understand it, you think it must be aliens. And the way I was able to get away from that is that we were able to explain it. That's I never thought we would be able to, you know, if you would talk to me back in August and September. But you know, if we look at the circumstantial or the evidence from the videos, so first of all, for the cover-up story, like, why are we covering up and trying to tell people this plane went in the South Indian Ocean where we didn't find anything, where we somehow weren't tracking it with our SOSUS system, our satellite system, we had no radar that saw it somehow. All these things should have caught the plane. No debris field, no black boxes. The only way we would cover up with such an extensive cover-up like that would be as if we're trying to hide something. And hiding some UFOs doesn't seem like that would be enough. So if this was aliens that did it, I feel like we would just say, here's this weird video, or we saw something anomalous happen to the plane, we can't explain it, or just say that it got destroyed or something like that, as opposed to this, send them on the wild goose chase where they're never going to find it, say that it went somewhere in the ocean, and then we'll have plausible deniability for why we never find anything in the future, which is what I think is going on. The assets they're filming are U.S. military. So right away, that's the culprit number one. Whenever you see some, you know, video come out, like if you were to find a video come out that, you know, shows somebody getting murdered, you would say, okay, who is filming that?
Right.
You know, especially if it was a video that just been uncovered. So also, I remember from talking to Chris Leto, one of the first things he did when he looked at these videos, he goes, that looks like an experimental test, because the drone is flying very close to the plane. The drone cannot catch the plane either. So this indicates this is either a rescue operation, or this is an operation where whatever it is, they know what's about to happen. So either we got extremely lucky and we were filming this during this rescue operation, all of a sudden some alien orbs come out of nowhere, or this was something that was pre-planned. When you watch the drone video, you can tell this is something that was pre-planned. The way they zoom in on the plane, the way they center the frame on the plane, they zoom out right before the zap. Like, whoever's filming this seems to know something is about to occur there. They're filming before the orbs even show up. So this isn't, and this plane cannot outrun these orbs either. The orbs look like they're coming in like Mach 3, like 2,000 miles an hour.
Right.
The pattern we see on these orbs is explained by computer program. There's no aliens flying around these little orbs. There's not people flying around in the little orbs either. So this is like an advanced computer program, some kind of tracking, some kind of like search and lock type of military system. And I'm not active or former military, but that's what people have explained to me. The fire event that we uncovered related to this plane, where we see the smoke coming out of the back of the plane here, also would indicate this either rescue motive or some type of elaborate sabotage. And the other thing too is that we can't attribute human motivations to a non-human intelligence. So, people would say like, why are they abducting this plane? What have you? But
that was my next question.
Humans do.
That was my next.
And the last bit is that from scientific perspective, we can explain everything that we see. This is warp drive. This is Alcubierre drive, if you want to think of it like that. It doesn't look like what we would expect in Star Trek.
Right.
Because we have a device that can do it to just a normal object like a 777. It's not something that's like the nacelles are connected on the back of the spaceship. It's that we've got these orbs that can float around and they can produce this type of effect where they're producing energy levels high enough that they can break the Schwinger limit, which makes the local area become nonlinear, which is really like ripping through the fabric of reality.
Well, so I want to go back to what you just said though about that, the idea of, let's say that it's indeed what you think it is, and it's these orbs from this technology that the government has. Why do they single out this domestic flight? Why do they see? Do you think, not that you have the definitive answer, but do you think that this was the flight? They knew that from the second this thing took off, they're going to follow it to where it's going to go? Or was it, hey, whatever one crosses in there, why not just take a plane that has nobody on it? Like, are they, and where? And then even the crazier question is, where the hell did it go?
Yeah, no, great questions.
Yeah.
And the other reason I want to say too why I believe it's our technology is that I contacted Salvatore Paez, and he came back and said, I want you to set up a podcast. And this guy's an active Navy engineer who's got some pretty famous UFO patents that I think you're probably familiar with.
Okay.
And the only reason why I think somebody like that would want to talk to me, and we talked several times and we still occasionally correspond, is because he's looking at his patents. He's looking at technology he's seen firsthand. In my opinion, he hasn't said that. But I also talked to people like my friend Dave Rossi, who's a DoD contractor who works on some of these private SAP labs. And he's just straight up said he thinks this is real, and he's seen this kind of technology in labs that he has worked on. So sometimes you just have to listen to when people talk.
Sure.
Now, with respect to the motive, I think that there's two main lines of reasoning. The one I was on for the longest period of time was the idea that this fire event was accidental. The lithium-ion batteries, there's way too many lithium-ion batteries in the cargo of this plane, extremely unsafe.
Right.
They outlawed them in the cargo passenger planes after this happened. And I thought, well, this is a rescue operation. This happens. United States comes out. Maybe there's a VIP on board this plane, says, I'm not going down with this plane. You got to rescue me. And for some reason, they can't land. So they're going to try a water landing, which is what we actually see happening in the videos, corroborated by a witness, corroborated by a Chinese-only Mayday call.
Right.
And they say, you got to use the secret tech and bail me out here, because we see this endothermic absorption of energy. It's possible that endothermic event absorbs the energy out of the batteries, which is what causes the lithium runaway fire. So you could argue that that's one motive, but the motive that I'm on is espionage, which is the free-scale semiconductor scientists and engineers. There's 20 of these guys on board the plane, guys and girls. They've got this story that they're going to China to upgrade the plants. It turns out the number one target for espionage of China stealing intellectual property is Chinese nationals that work for American companies.
Wow.
8 of these people were Chinese nationals. They were all working for American company, Freescale Semiconductors. The technology that allows these types of effects that we see in anti-gravitational effects is plasma physics and superconductivity, aka semiconductor microchips that are extremely advanced. In fact, superconducting microchips also enable quantum computers, which might be another requirement when you look at those orbs spinning around the plane. So I think that these people were directly tied to the technology that was used on the plane. I think China was planning on stealing that technology from them, either having them defect or just getting it from them, and that the United States said they were enough of China stealing our stuff, and that this technology is so powerful that it was worth sending a message to China to say, don't try this again, and that this was potentially planned from the beginning. Now, the difference between these theories is Do you believe that the United States could react in an hour and 20 minutes is what it takes from the time this plane went dark over the South China Sea to the time where it's in the Nicobar Islands where Catherine T sees it, where our drone has intercepted it and our satellite has been operationalized on it in order for the rescue scenario? Or do you think that this was something that was pre-planned months in advance? You know, they knew that these guys were potentially defecting. They figured out that they were all going to be on this flight from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing, that this was the perfect time to pull it off. And it's pretty dark no matter how you think of it, because there's a lot of collateral damage that's happening on that plane. Now, Florence Duchengi talked or found out from the nephew of the pilot that he was told by somebody, "I'm sorry, your uncle was collateral damage," which to me indicates espionage straight up. Like, what other scenario would you say the pilot is collateral damage unless it was espionage? Because if it was a rescue operation, they're not really collateral damage. They got saved.
What about the last part of that question? Where does the plane go?
Yeah. So now, first of all, I don't like to tell people stuff that I can't possibly know without strong
What do you
evidence.
think?
I think there might be videos on the other side wherever this plane shows up. I think we are seeing it getting warped from one location on Earth to another location on Earth. And based on, we can see this plane going south into the east in our video. And then we see the plane, if we look in this like frame by frame at the drone video, it looks like it's getting sucked back into this endothermic event that's going on. So based on that, we've also predicted there's a fourth orb, kind of using macroscopic phase conjugation. You shoot a beam at it, and then the idea is kind of like a rubber band where the plane's just going to slingshot over here. So if the direction of travel we see there is correct and it's getting pulled backwards, that means it's going somewhere to the west. And what's west of Nicobar Islands? The Maldives. And in fact, there was a B777 fire suppression device that had to be empty because it washed up on shore. It gets reported on as a bomb, but it's clearly a B777 fire suppression device. Gets ignored. They just say, no, we're not going to look into that, even though there's a literal serial number on it that you can see if you guys Google this. Pretty funny. And then there was 20 islanders on a small island just north of Diego Garcia that all see a jumbo jet with the blue and red stripe of Malaysian Airlines. And these people don't see jumbo jets flying low either. And this was in the early morning hours. Now, this was dismissed because the plane in their sighting was coming from the west. And everybody thought, well, it would have to be coming from the east if it was Malaysian Airlines. But if this plane gets warped somewhere over the Maldives to the west, now all of a sudden those sightings come right back into play.
But where does it go, though? But where does it go? Like, even if it comes in from the west, like, so what do they do?
Land is like everybody get off. And, whoa, that was weird.
That's the part where we don't know if it like landed in the Maldives, took back off, but those islanders see the plane flying to the south. And what's south? Diego Garcia military base. This is the base where you look at the conspiracy theories out there. Marc Dugain, famous French author, months afterwards said this plane went there. Supposedly he was told to stop looking into it. Catherine T, I think in her 2008 blog post, said that she believed the plane went there as well. She was the main witness in the story that we're presenting. Dick Gregory is a comedian. He passed away. He was talking about these patents that were out there that reverted the Rothschilds. I will say that the Freescale Semiconductor employees are the motive, but the people in those patents were not on board the plane. So that feels like a little bit of misinformation that was thrown out to get people off the trail. But not only did those islanders see it, but there was also a picture from the American passenger, Philip Wood, that appeared on the website 4chan about 10 days later, I want to say. And it was a black picture with him saying, "My name's Philip Wood. I have been held prisoner. I feel like I've been drugged. I can't think clearly." And it's just a black picture, but it's not just black. There's actually like people dug into the image itself, and there's kind of like our visual artifacts in the picture. And the EXIF data on that picture pointed Diego Garcia. It turns out Diego Garcia actually has a CIA black site that was used to transfer prisoners from the war in Afghanistan as well. So there's a decent amount of circumstantial evidence that Diego Garcia is where it ended up. Plus, it makes a lot of sense. It's the middle of nowhere. You can't land commercial airliners there. There'd be no radar from other countries that would see it to go there. But again, we can only speculate. The people that would have to tell us would be the United States government.
Yeah, it's why my head goes in a lot of different directions there too. Because like when it came out, when it was turning, like when I think of like initially, right? Okay, this thing gets warped. It goes to a different dimension. It goes to a different timeline. It goes like my head goes, all right, well, that's why, who knows? These people who get on the commercial airline, to them, they open their eyes and they're back to their family. And it's just nobody knows different here. And I can start to look into that. When I hear the particular, and I know, Ashton, you're not saying this is definitively what you say, just potential theories. But like if I go, okay, so let's say the theory of that it gets transported to the West, as you said, and then it doesn't crash, they take it to this air base, then what are they doing with the commercial people there? They're keeping them there, they're killing them, they're doing this. It's like that's where it gets like where and then it goes back to, well, if it was a rescue mission, if it was to that particular person or whoever was on the flight, and then the rest of these people are collateral damage, my head goes, well, why would they do that in the first place to these people in general if they're gonna warp them to another time in the same timeline, and then the Islanders are seeing them and all this. It gets a little murky for me. Do you understand how I could see that?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And so here's the thing is that I'm not sure how many people were even alive before we even get to that point from the videos, because we've got lithium ion batteries between 500 and 5,000 pounds, depending on if you believe Mentor pilot or what we found out there. Either way, those things are extremely toxic. They would have been flying low so that they can give the passengers enough oxygen to be able to breathe, because the fire suppression devices suck the oxygen out of the plane. This toxic smoke would be spewing through the cabin. Also, we found out, take this with a grain of salt, but on one of the old comment boards, somebody claimed to be a Boeing whistleblower and said that they had falsified the toxic fume analysis from the plastics on board Boeing airplanes, and that if one of those things caught on fire, the toxic smoke from the plastics in the plane would kill everybody as well. Wow. So I think that there's a very real possibility that many, if not most of the people were already dead before you even got to that point. And then it would be really awkward because now you've warped a plane of mostly dead people somewhere else, and now you've got to explain how that all went out. Now, what I would think is that these people will become wards of the state. You would either have to silence them through coercion or through force. And the most logical way to me, and I'm not somebody who's thinks on the dark side, would be that you would put them in witness protection. You would just give them a new life and say, your new life begins now. Here you go. You could argue that they were trying to bring those Freescale semiconductor engineers back into the fold. Hey, you were trying to escape with this technology, but you work for us. You could argue that they never allowed to leave Diego Garcia ever again. So that is really dark. And I think that's why the whole nature of the story is dark, is that this makes our government do some pretty evil stuff. Makes me wonder, are we the baddies out there in the world?
Yeah. So we both watched, and Ashton, I'm sure you have too, the documentary on Netflix now. And there's one piece there. I mean, we're talking about a conspiracy theory in this video in itself. But, when you consider some of the theories going around in that documentary, I mean, they're crazy as well.
Bring up that lady, the woman.
This is what I was. Cindy Henry,
I've talked to her before.
You have talked to her because
I've talked to literally every single expert that you could probably imagine related to this plane.
Great, because this is the part that I just tear my hair out. This woman finds a debris field where it should have gone down. She's tweeting. She's getting viral tweets. She's trying to get people to pay attention. And yes, there is something fishy going on with this, with the idea that the Malaysian government is like, no, nothing to see here. Just move on. Why didn't anybody? Why didn't anybody take her seriously? But if that is the plane, well, then how did it get there from where your theory could be in the Maldives? Do they bring it back? What say you?
Yeah, respect to her and all the other investigators, but unfortunately, they're just flat out wrong in this case. Now, the reason why her theory doesn't make any sense is that this plane clearly didn't crash in the South Indian Ocean. Nobody's even claiming it did. That's actually where we searched for 5 days before we started changing the search. You can't hide the debris field of a plane that's shot down. You can't even hide the debris field of a plane that crashes in the ocean.
Right.
And this is where anybody who thinks the plane was shot down secretly, whatever, the theory completely falls apart. We found nothing. The official search found literally not one piece of the plane. There's boaters all throughout the ocean everywhere. You can't keep everyone silent and hide everyone, whoever would have found a piece of the plane somewhere. If this plane crashed in the South China Sea, there would have been random people picking up pieces out of the water, bodies, luggage everywhere. I looked at her images, and I didn't find them to have any credibility whatsoever.
Okay.
Like the scale's not even correct when she like draws these M's of the plane over the things that she thinks she sees in the water, which, you know, I understand, like she's trying to find answers and there weren't any. So she's doing her best. She was one of those people that was, you know, if you guys remember back, they were looking through commercial satellite pictures and they were trying to find debris in the water. Yeah. And a lot of people imagine seeing debris when it's not really debris. Like she's seeing like probably white caps or maybe other junk that might be in the ocean. But the main problem is they literally searched everywhere there as well.
I see.
They even searched when the China posted a satellite picture, which I think is actually of our event in the videos. They claimed, but it was reported on as being debris in the South China Sea. And then we went and looked in the South China Sea there and also, again, found no debris. And that was around March 13th. So it's just completely implausible that the plane was shot down. I know there's other people that have similar theories about the plane being shot down, that somehow they quarantined it all off. Like, people got to realize if a plane's shot down in the sky, the debris field's going to be hundreds of miles wide.
Right.
It's not the type of thing where you're just quarantining it off and preventing everyone from getting to the debris. The satellites would have seen it everywhere as well.
Right. And so there was inside of that dock, there was mentioned that there was a few people who found actual things from the plane, and then
that debris.
There was some of that. So, but
let's talk about that.
Yeah,
please.
So the debris is found in Africa.
Right.
Now, right away, if people think back to when this debris was found, everyone was going, "What the hell?" Because we're expecting debris to wash up in Australia. That's where near the plane supposedly crashed based on these satellite pings. The first piece gets found in the Reunion Islands, which you could argue it's this flaperon. It's mysteriously missing its unique serial plate. You guys can Google this and confirm.
That's on that dock
interesting.
Too. Yeah.
Instead, they go look inside of it and try to find a part number inside. And then they say, okay, well, it's got this part number. Well, they don't tell you that GA Telesis bought an exact replica of the plane from MH370 from Malaysian Airlines in October of 2013, which now you wonder if that had been scrapped, somebody could, you know, falsify this or thrown this piece in the water. But in fact, I think this is from MH370. The main problem is that the debris couldn't have floated that far. We're talking 2,000 to 3,000 miles from the crash site, and nothing is found in the supposed crash site. They do this drift analysis. The very first thing they find out, couldn't have washed up there. So then they go, okay, give us a replica of this flaperon from the Americans, and they put it in the water. And they see it sticking out of the water, and they go, oh, this makes sense, because the way that this stuff's going to float is it's going to get blown by the wind. That's how it's going to drift over there. So they say, okay, this solves our problem. But there's a problem with that itself. The part that's sticking out of the water has barnacles all over it.
Right.
That's not possible. So they look at the barnacle growth as well, and they realize that the barnacle growth is not consistent with the flaperon being in the water for 16 months. It's only consistent with the flaperon being in the water for 4 months, which again makes it impossible for it to have drifted that far. You go look at the Rolls-Royce engine cowling, which is a piece of the engine. It's got big RR on it. Washes up in South Africa, 3,000 miles away from the supposed crash site. Literally impossible for it to have washed up that far in that period of time. It would have to travel like 10, 15 miles every single day for a year and a half in a straight line.
Right.
And this is a piece of, like, it's like, imagine a piece of paper, putting it in the water and thinking that's going to float in a specific direction. If you actually look at the currents, you can just look up the currents, ocean currents. You'll see from where the crash site is, the currents actually don't even go west. They go east. And they kind of circle around. It should have gone east and hit Australia, and then it kind of wraps up north and then back to the west again. So we absolutely 100% should have had debris washing up in Australia if the crash site is correct. Now, if the pings are incorrect, then this completely throws out the whole idea of the plane even going into the South Indian Ocean. So this is the part where we already searched up and down the entire 7th arc where they say these pings prove where the plane crashed. And the debris should have washed up in Australia. 0 debris washes up in Australia. They searched up and down it, above water, below water, find nothing at all. Now, if you take out those pings that say it went into the South Indian Ocean that are not consistent with the debris that was found in Africa, the next best, most plausible story is the one I'm presenting to you right now of the plane disappearing in the Nicobar Islands. Now, what is a better location for that debris to have gotten to Africa than the crash site? Diego Garcia military base is about halfway. Now it's much more plausible that debris could wash up in Africa if they had just thrown it in the water in Diego Garcia. Alternatively, due to the fire event and this warping, if this plane went somewhere over west of the Maldives from this warping event, a few pieces of the plane could have fallen off there. I mean, we were watching Boeing planes fall apart midair for the last month and a half here. So you can imagine a plane that's on fire could have these pieces falling from it and then washing up in Africa.
Well, yeah, where this theory our U.S. government, the dark idea of this, that they took out this plane, collateral damage across the board. I thought the documentary on Netflix did a wonderful thing about humanizing the people that are on that plane. And the story that really got me was the French man that lost his wife and his 2 kids. And, you know, I never thought I would, I mean, I hear you all the time, Kristian. I just had a daughter, so it hit me finally. And his story, he's approached by Secret Service that says U.S. knows. You know, what do you make of that? Because that's where I could see a thread in the Netflix doc, you know, kind of being able to somewhat connect to this theory.
Oh, I think that's 100% correct.
Okay.
I think that he was told by somebody who's in the intelligence community, because I think people have guilty consciences. I don't think thousands of people know what happened, but I think dozens, if not hundreds, do. I think some of them have guilty consciences about it. This guy lost his wife and his kids, Guillaume Watrellos.
Yeah.
And he just recently, he was on a French thing for the 10-year anniversary, saying that he still doesn't believe these pilot suicide narratives or whatever they're out there.
Have you spoken to him? Have you spoken to him?
I've spoken to no family members. I reached out early on, back in like October, to a couple that I found on Twitter. None replied. And I just decided that I know how sensitive what I'm disclosing is.
Right.
Like, people have to come to terms with the idea that these can even be possibly real before they can begin to have the conversation of,
if they came to you, you would talk to them, but you're not going to go to them.
100%.
Got it.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And I would say, you know, here's the evidence, and they could just watch my podcasts and that I go on like this and what have you, if they want to know my opinions on it. And I would tell them, I'm absolutely certain this is what happened to your loved ones, and I'm very sorry, because I don't think that I want to give them false hope. I don't think there's very good probability that many, if any of them, are still alive. I don't think that Mr. B would be telling the French father that the Americans know exactly what happened. There was 2 AWACS in the area, which I think that Edward C. Lin, the guy I've identified as leaking these videos, I think he was on one of those AWACS that night. I think that you can imagine that if somebody's leaking these videos, they're having an emotional reaction.
Can you talk about that, Ashton? Can you talk about more about that? Talk about who you believe leaked this and why?
Oh, yeah.
So remember in the beginning of this where I said the satellite video, the thing that got me caught on it right away was that this was a screen recording.
Yes.
That this was a Citrix session. Somebody was logged in. You start to realize there's a story here about the person who's leaking these videos. And I started to build like a psychological profile, almost like I'm a criminal investigator for like, who's the guy that's leaking these? The drone videos in blue, it's not black and white. There's no HUD data anywhere on it. It looks like the person that's leaking this is minimizing the amount of damage that would be done to the U.S. military. And I thought, this is a patriot. This is somebody who saw this, freaked out, had an emotional reaction. Maybe they thought they were looking at aliens like most people do when they first look at this. And when no one's going to ever know what happened to MH370 unless I leak these videos. I'm going to do the world a favor. But they had to go ahead and crop the drone out of the satellite video. They maybe have cropped out other AWACS that were in the area and other assets from that satellite video. That may be why it's like just a small screen on there. But because they were actually logged into the database, they would have got caught. So one day in October, I'm sitting there and I'm like, wait, can I actually find the person who leaked these? Is that possible? So I start Googling around and I realized that you can't hide military charges against people unless you're in martial law, which we were not. So it would have to be public information if they charge this person. So then I started looking through lists of people that have been charged with espionage and willful retention of defense information. And it took me a couple weeks. It was really hard to find this person. I had to start doing specific Google date range searches because there's nothing about them after 2016 at all on the internet. Edward C. Lin, Lieutenant Commander. Lieutenant Commander is a Navy rank only. He was part of the VPU2 secret squadron. Somebody just told me the VP squadrons actually have deployments in Diego Garcia as well, which I thought was really weird. Like as of last week, you're the first podcast I've talked about this on. And so I started looking through all his stuff. He's got signals intelligence over a lot of the articles. There's one called The Strange Case, Lieutenant Commander Edward C. Lin, and my spider sense is going crazy at this point. I'm like, this is the guy. And I had looked through a bunch of other people. Nobody was even remotely close to the profile I was looking for. He was a naturalized Taiwanese American, which gives us some idea of maybe he leaked these videos to a Taiwanese counterpart. And this is why America thought he was like doing espionage, which is what they ended up charging him with. They were going to put him in prison for life.
Wow.
And they had to admit later on there was no evidence he exchanged any information with anyone from China. The defense argued that the classified information in question was available on the internet, and the U.S. has never talked about it. They actually wanted to force him into a plea deal because they were afraid that if it went to court, that the information that he leaked would have to be made publicly available. And if that was the case, then people would have seen that it's these videos. He also got caught with flight manifests that include search and rescue code names. The VPU-2 squadron actually flies the P-8 Poseidon, the Ares EP-3 spy plane 2. These are super advanced spy planes that are actually used for search and rescue and surveillance, and they pass information up to upper command as well. His deployment began February 2014, and we have a quote from his lawyer saying the investigation into him began April 2nd, 2014, which your window of time here is very narrow. So then I went ahead and FOIA'd the FBI and the NCIS because I'm like, this is the guy. I'm going to get something. They give me anything, I'm going to find that this is the guy somehow. FBI rejects it, saying like private information about the guy, and I'm like, okay. The NCIS rejected it in total. I got a thing signed by the head of legal from them saying to be kept secret in the interest of national defense or foreign policy. And I'm just looking at that going, it's this rare Obama era exemption for why they won't give me a single thing about it. And I'm going, wow, this is really suspicious at this point. Like, why are they protecting whatever he did? We went through and looked at his appeals, and in the appeals, the penal codes are consistent with the evidence against him potentially being video evidence that he leaked. They had to have people testify as to what he did was so damning and damning to the United States military. I truly think that he thought those were UFO videos, and then they went and told him, no, you just like gave away our super secret super weapon to the world. And then that's why he agreed to the plea deal. Because otherwise, I think he probably would have fought the charges.
And I'm assuming
then, he appealed that his charges were way too long. He had a 9-year sentence even after the plea deal. Or if you go look at other people that even pled guilty to espionage, they only get like a couple years. And these are people that are selling secrets to China directly. Jeez. So he got a huge sentence.
And and that's where he is right now.
So he got out of prison probably in 2021.
Okay.
I've said this many times, so I'll say it again, is that we were able to track down his whereabouts and a potential cell phone number related to him very easily.
Wow.
I did call only one time, and somebody picked up the phone and hung up. And that to me was a pretty good indicator this is probably the guy, like, picked up and hung up like immediately. And so I sent him text messages, told him that, he's my hero and that I would do anything to support him. I still would. I think that if this guy wasn't the guy too at this point, he probably would have reached out to me. I'm hundreds of millions of impressions across 80 different podcasts and all of social media talking about this, saying his name. You would think if he's not the guy, he'd probably reach out and be like, yo, stop saying my name. So,
because it's not true.
And some people say, why don't you do more to try to reach and get in touch with him? First of all, I don't want to get arrested. Second of all, if he did a plea deal, he might go to prison if he talks about this again. He's probably been convinced that he hurt our national security and doesn't want to talk about it. His communications are almost certainly being monitored. And I reported to AARO. So the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, the UFO community hates these people with a passion because they said that extraterrestrials don't exist and that we're not covering anything up. Well, I gave them verifiable information that we are. I gave them both of these videos. I gave them the name of the leaker, Lieutenant Commander Edward C. Lynn. Any of this stuff they can just look up. If they find out that these are the videos this guy leaked, absolute proof. If they look up the drone video and the Cyber system and find out this is exactly what it looks like, absolute proof. Especially because the Cyber stuff we had to just deduce from publicly available information. The drone video, you can maybe plausibly say that somebody magically just knew exactly what a drone video would look like. But there are a lot of the debunkers out there were arguing that they don't come in this thermal color, this palette, and we found absolute proof that they do. In fact, MQ-1C has a specific, not only multispectral camera on board, but does have color, high resolution imaging as well. So, so if we just happen to deduce all this stuff, like what I tell people is, if these videos are fake, then how can we deduce real spy surveillance capabilities from them in general? And the AARO is pretty much ghosted me. Now, they came back right away. And they actually not right away. It took I talked to them in January, and then back, was it 2 weeks ago, April 12th, so a little over 2 weeks ago, they came back to me and they were sending me messages for like every few weeks saying, we'll get back to you first thing next week. And then they don't. And they keep just kind of blowing me off. And then finally, April 12th, they responded back to me, and I'm just going to read off to you. It says, Mr. Forbes, apologies for the slow response. AARO is researching several topics at the moment. Some of AARO's initial research into MH370 has revealed U.S. government search efforts after the airliner disappeared from radar. I believe the genesis and authenticity of the videos may be helpful. Can you confirm the date the videos were published to the Regicide Anon YouTube channel? And yes, a quick follow-up call may be helpful. Now, that was April 2nd, so That was 2.5 weeks ago. And I've sent them a couple emails since then saying, I know what we did to the plane, and here's how the science works. And so now they seem to be, and also that we found out that the military really uses Google Earth with this quick terrain modeler software as well. So to me, I feel like we've got them kind of dead to rights, and I'm afraid that they're trying to come up with some kind of cover story for what they're going to tell me, because there's really nothing they can tell me that, as in terms of a lie, that it has to line up with the evidence. So I want to get them on the record as soon as possible to minimize what kind of story they can come up with. Well,
I mean, look, all that this is the thing. This is why I wanted you on the show. And I mean, your facts and everything you have. The thing is with you, Ashton, is that you're so damn convincing in all the theories that you have and all the evidence that you have and all the way that you put things together. And as I said before, with certain questions that I had, even when we go back to the questions I asked you about, like the time warping and why they would do that, and you have your theories for it, but I have to wrap my brain around it. But you're very good at talking on podcasts, and as you said, you had someone who asked you to do your own podcast. Has there been, because like you bring up how I discovered you through the UAP stuff, through the UFO stuff, and like there's a big movement there with whether I've come up with a couple of names, whether it's Lou Elizondo, Gary Nolan, Avi Loeb, Jeremy Corbell, anybody that I think of right away. When I think of these videos right now, I go Ashton Forbes. And then, you know what I mean? Like, so, and it's not saying that you're the only one fighting the fight. You're clearly not. But where are more names going to be behind you to say, like, look, what Ashton's got? Because I will say that I even saw that on your Twitter. There are people who are backing up your claims, but more people who are as vocal as you. And then I know that was a lot right there, but even another follow-up to that is, why not look into doing a documentary on this? Why not having you be the James Fox of this thing and pushing this forward and getting to the Netflixes of the world, the TMZs, whatever it might be, to push this forward?
Yeah, great questions in general. So first of all, I would say that I found a bunch of people now sharing the videos recently in other languages, especially, that weren't retweeting me and stuff like that. I was kind of surprised when I was searching the other day for MH370 and saw that, which tells me there are people who are jumping into it a little bit. Now, with respect to these UFO community, celebrities, pseudo celebrities, whatever you want to call them, I've put the community on notice. I'd say that I think that even the UFO community, a lot of these people don't realize the true implications of what the nature of the phenomenon is, which is anti-gravitational technology, space-time warping. In order for any aliens to be visiting us from even the nearest star system, we have to achieve light speed travel.
Yeah.
And that is something that I don't think people wrap their brains around what that means. What that means is warp drive. And that's what I think a lot of people struggle with, just like anyone who looks at this and they go, the hardest part is to imagine that we can do that. Well, if you're somebody who thinks there's floaty crafts around there and what have you, like that's kind of a prerequisite. And I think people will get on board, but I do think there's a certain level of ontological shock related to it.
Absolutely.
You have to rationalize, how can we have had this? And going back to like Jesse Michaels and what have you, like it seems like we've been slowly advancing this technology for decades. These videos from 2014, and this is not, looking at those orbs, that's not the first iteration of this technology. Like there's multiple different things happening in those orbs, which to me would indicate this has been getting developed for potentially decades. I think it could go all the way back to the Philadelphia experiment and dropping the bomb. Even Tucker Carlson floated on Joe Rogan this idea that the atom bomb could be some kind of reverse engineered technology as well. So I just think there's an interesting number of pushback. In terms of documentary, I have talked to some people, not very seriously, but a little bit, about potentially doing something like that. I think you have to realize, too, that if this is real, the United States government controls all the world's media, at least all the Western world's media. So I think that we would face pushback directly or indirectly for pushing these theories. And this is the reason why mainstream media has never reached out to me, even though I've got huge podcasters reaching out to me. No news station wants to talk about this.
But that's similar. That's similar to the UFO stuff too, though, isn't it? I mean, that's a lot. I mean, look, the one thing where my biggest complaint in all of this is how you just mentioned News Nation. News Nation is the only one that really covers any of the UFO stuff at all, right? Like, so There are people though that have many, and like a James Fox or Darcy Weir, these people who do these documentaries that do get traction on these things. So that's kind of why even though maybe the government itself it's going to be harder to get certain access and things too, but I just feel like a documentary, could kind of push out these theories the way that you've been doing them on the shows also.
Yeah, and News Nation just did an interview with that kid in Vegas who said he saw aliens last year.
right.
Yeah. So they're willing to talk to a kid that says he saw aliens.
Right.
But I'm sitting here saying we got secret advanced technology, anti-gravitational technology. I've got 2 videos. I can give you the full story. They don't reach out to me at all. It seems a little bit weird, in my opinion, if you're willing to talk to those people, but not me related to this. You've got, I know for a fact Ross Coulthart thinks the videos are debunked. He's on News Nation all the time.
Okay.
So I think that he's been fooled by some of these debunks that I went over in the beginning. Jeremy Corbell told Joe Rogan he thought the videos were debunked. These are people, Jeremy Corbell puts out a floaty jellyfish alien thing that's not doing anything anomalous. And where everybody's talking about that. But I'm like giving people verifiable information where if you're like a Ross Coulthart, you're supposedly a journalist, you could go find out about Edward C. Lynn's case, and that would be absolute proof. Why would you not look into that, in my opinion? So I'm highly suspect of a lot of the UFO community celebrity people that are out there, especially if this is really our super weapon. Then this is an issue of national security and national defense. It makes me wonder how many of these people are being controlled directly or indirectly by the government to distract from the real implications, which is this technology. I think the government's hiding this technology because it's for our own good, so that we won't destroy ourselves. The logical implications of warp drive, going to what I've seen Avi Loeb talk about, and I know you've talked to him recently, is that there is an ether. So people talk about these vacuum fluctuations in space, whatever. They're talking about the ether. This is Tesla's idea going back 100 years. Yeah. There's an extra dimension that we don't perceive that's full of negative energy. And this is also what you need in order to warp an object in using Alcubierre drive. This is what we see in the videos is a dark, cold endothermic event. It's negative energy is what we're seeing there. So, if we have that kind of capability, the other logical conclusion is that it leads to free energy, straight up free, unlimited energy. And now, this was the plot of the Fallout show that was just on TV. Sure. People are killing each other over this, and we might be able to destroy ourselves. You can imagine if the Taliban or ISIS has free energy of the types of doomsday weapons they could make. It's not just suicidal bombers anymore. Now it's you blow up the whole planet. So yes, I think that documentary probably will get made one day. But for me, just like I said at the beginning of this, I'm just a normal guy. I'm trying to get the information out there. I'm going to start to try to engage with physicists and scientists because so they're looking at the problem and they're working their way forward from the science. I'm looking at the answers and I'm working my way backward on it. And I want to challenge them to this idea that Tesla was right, that they should, and everybody watching should look into a guy named Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Bearden, who is literally talking about cold explosions and scalar interferometry, which is, I think, exactly what we're seeing in those videos. Back in the 80s, he was talking about it. And that's how we came to this idea of macroscopic phase conjugation. So real quick, I'll explain the science. And I'm not a physicist. I'm not an electrical engineer. I've just been studying it for the last 6 months, trying to catch up. The idea is you have a 0-point system. The 0-point system can be like this, but it can also be a perfect equilateral triangle. You have all the orbs shoot their beams so that all the waves cancel each other out. This creates a scalar potential at the area of the plane. That's why they're mapping the plane to figure out how big that has to be. The scalar potential is a stress in the medium. And what's a stress in the medium? A gravitational wave. And then you have a fourth orb, which was proposed by my friend Dave Rossi. And then the fourth orb is shooting a beam at that interferometry zone. And then that's creating a perfectly phase conjugated beam. Now, a phase conjugated beam is a beam where if you're looking in a mirror and you look like angularly down, you can see, let's say, your lower half. In a phase conjugate mirror, if you look at any point in the mirror, the only thing you see are your irises. It creates a perfect reflection directly back at the source. And that's exactly what happens in scalar or mixed wave interferometry. As you create a 0-point system, these are your pump waves. You shoot something into that, and it creates a phase conjugate reflection going back the other direction. This is the explanation for what's happening to this plane. It requires an ether, and it requires this idea that space is not empty.
Man, before I let you go, this you mentioned, as I mentioned up top, and then you kind of briefly talked about it with Rogan, and I knew that you were supposed to go on Rogan, and then Jeremy Corbell had said that it wasn't, that these videos were indeed, as you said, debunked. So that never happened. Has there been further conversations with the Rogan team or no?
No, I haven't pushed on it at all
Okay.
either. I'm not the kind of guy that's like generally wanting to be soliciting myself for people. I think that people have to come to terms with, okay, I want to talk to this guy. I think he's legit. If they don't feel comfortable talking to me about the content or myself, then I don't think it'll be a productive conversation. But I do, and maybe you've had this happen, but anybody who announces that they're generally talking to me, for some reason gets flooded with people telling them not to talk to me, which I think
I actually haven't. I actually haven't gotten that yet.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah, no, I haven't. I mean, it's not to say that they won't. I also, to be completely honest with you, I made it a point to, I shut off from drama in general.
Yeah.
Because like I've since covering, I mean, we're used to from strangely enough, you get a lot of discourse from the movie TV review space more so than
ridiculous.
That alone has seen when I started doing this, and people are like, be careful for this person or watch out for this person. Just like I just want to talk to people, and like I told you up top, I want to ask questions. I'm curious about these particular things. I think you make an excellent case. I don't know what the hell I believe, to be honest. I'm not sure. I think you make an absolutely very compelling case, and more so, and less about the idea of soliciting yourself for. The reason why I bring up documentaries for exactly what you just said is because I believe that with the information and with the visual cues and with the people that you have in there, and some people need to be shown things on a television, and some people need to, in order for these images and these things to place. I mean, look at Reilly and I just talking about the Malaysia thing. I had heard about the Malaysia flight, but I really learned the majority of it from watching that Netflix doc. And I think that something like that is less about, in my opinion, is less about a solicitation and more about getting the information out in another medium, right? Yeah. And let people decide in the same way, because that's what you're ultimately doing this for, right? You're saying, look, here's the information that I have. This is what I believe. And it's what you said to us. Believe what you believe after I leave it with you. I'm just showing you what I found. And there's no difference from you and I and Reilly talking for an hour about this than you putting together an hour doc and people going, look, again, whether it is a TMZ, I know is covering this stuff now, right? Netflix, obviously. Netflix to me on a follow-up would be very interesting to see. So that's more so why I recommended it more so than anything else.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that if there are producers out there and what have you, and they want to produce a documentary, it would be pretty easy to make a really long one. I've got a lot of content that could go through, so they can be happy to reach out to me. But, part of it too is to show people that I'm not trying to do this as a money-making thing. A lot of people try to claim that I'm a grifter or whatever like that, but absolutely not the case. I wish I made more money off this. I think the podcasters made a lot more money off of this than I have, and no podcasters ever paid me.
Right.
And then with respect to it, I totally respect that people are skeptical about this. You should be extremely skeptical about the claims I'm making, because they completely change the paradigm and have the ability to change our entire civilization. Even I was skeptical before I dug into this, and it even blows me away. I find myself reading my own content because I'm like, how is this real? How is this possible? Right. But what I'll say is I'm so confident that I'm not worried at all, that I know that what's going to happen is that the science will prove this to be true and possible. I don't know how long that's going to take, because I think that a lot of this science is we've hamstrung ourselves when we reduce the Maxwell equations, and that's why we can't manipulate gravity right now. But I think that people will figure it out. It's just going to take a while from the public perspective, and I think the government's known about it for decades. So eventually it will come out, and when it comes out, I don't want to hear any excuses about, we can warp objects, but we still didn't do that to the plane. At that point, I want people to just accept that this is what happened.
Wow. All right. Well, Ashton, first of all, thank you very much for joining us here on the show today. And where can people find you if they want to follow you on Twitter or X or whatever it's called these days?
Elon Musk's X. At just X Ashton is my handle on YouTube and on Twitter. That's my primary sources right now. I want to get on TikTok, but man, I don't know if I can do those TikTok videos. So you guys can follow me on there. If you want questions, please dig back through my highlights on Twitter. I get a lot of the same questions over and over. Where'd the plane go? So hopefully this podcast helped answer a lot of those questions, but there's a ton of content. You could drop down this rabbit hole for a week and probably still not read everything that's out there.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us once again.
Thank you, Ashton, so much.
For myself and Mark Reilly, look, this was a special episode. As I told you guys in the beginning, this is our first kind of over 30-minute video we've done on the Down to Earth channel. We're building this channel up. We've got it already up to almost 25,000 subscribers. And I believe that, this is the type of stuff. I'm going to take clips from this episode, put it on the Big Thing UAP Tuesday for the following week also, and subscribe to this channel, because this channel is growing even faster than the original one did. And so that's why I wanted to make sure that we didn't push it back another week, because I think it's important for Ashton's the things that he's talking about. I think it's make up your own decision from what you've heard here today. What do you think? What stands out? Were there things that Ashton talked about that at first you said, I don't know, oh wait, maybe that makes sense? Or the opposite? Did you go, I don't know, I thought maybe this could, but I don't really have an explanation for it? Put all the comments in there, and I think that myself, Reilly, and Ashton will all say, as long as it's a cordial conversation, as long as it's something you're asking the right questions, it's welcomed. It's like, it's the name calling and the finger pointing and all that nobody needs, because it's just not productive. So thanks for joining us here today. We are available on Apple Podcasts. We are available on Spotify. You can find the UAP Tuesday on audio version on this episode. You can find the audio on Spotify, on Apple, on the Down to Earth podcast feed. So put your comments in there. Click that like button. For myself, Mark, Reilly, and Ashton Forbes, see you tomorrow.